we have any announcements?
Yes. School is back and in full swing, from back-to-back school socials to the annual homecoming weekend to the first concerts of the year. Check the Spring Forward website at spring-forward.net for upcoming events, announcements, and all things Spring Forward.
Was that your first one? First
No.
announcement? No?
No, I do them every time.
Huh?
I do them every time.
Okay, I don't remember. It's been a long summer. You do a good job.
Thank you.
Public to be heard on agenda items only. Okay, board committee reports, curriculum and technology. Ms. Heaney's not here. Policy.
So the policy committee met on Monday, September 9th. We reviewed first we approved the minutes from the meeting in May. Then we reviewed a couple of policies related to safety, the school police incidents, reporting use of force, and use of force. We also had a discussion about current practices through the superintendent and athletic director's offices regarding the awareness of consequences for conflicts with student activities. We also had, that was just a brief discussion about that, and we briefly touched on students and the police and safety, and one more, building security and emergency evacuation at schools. All of those last four policies are ones that Chief Boyer is working on along with Mr. Rizzo. So when we have some more information about those, we'll be addressing those in future meetings. The HIPAA policy was also brought up and will be addressed at a future meeting. There was some consideration given to develop a policy on the submission of school notes for student absences, and looking to see if we can facilitate this digitally and securely, perhaps through Skyward or some other digital format, but moving away from written notes. And it's just in the very beginning stages of discussing that. I'm sure that Mr. Fitzgerald can give us some further information about whether we can even do that. We also had a brief topic on updating the policy for incidents involving vaping and subsequent fines and allocation of those collected funds. So with that being said, we will meet again in October and continue to work on the policies along with Chief Boyer to move those along and bring them back to the table. Thank you. Any questions at all?
Could you repeat the vaping discussion?
It was a brief topic at the end and what we talked about was that because vaping is such an issue and there's such attention in the media right now around that and the dangers of vaping, there is some consideration that the policy committee may give to talking about fines and where those allocated funds or where those funds would be allocated to should we impose something like that. We're in the very early stages of those discussions, but I do believe there's something going on over at the CTC where they are implementing fines for vaping. Isn't that right, Mr. Jenner? There was some discussion
they already
about
have that. They already have the fines for vaping. It's $100-some for getting caught vaping on school property.
150
Yeah,
Per student,
per student.
per student per incident.
not staff or visiting visitors.
Do we use a monetary punitive with something else? I haven't heard of that before.
Well, I know that in the past, when students were caught with tobacco, that they would be issued a citation. I'm not aware of us doing that here in Spring Forward, but I know that it is not unusual.
So if they're smoking, shouldn't it be more of a consequence and learn about and maybe help with the addiction issue? But
Well, I'm sure that policy's going to hash this out, but I'm not sure exactly what direction they're wanting to go with this.
because I find just punishing with money is not maybe the best way to go with teens.
Just to add to the vaping discussion, a number of districts are now considering possible class action suits against manufacturers like Juul for what is known as a public nuisance. The idea that the amount of administrator and teacher time taken away to deal with these issues has a monetary impact to school entities. And you're going to see, I suspect, that as a next phase of litigation. In fact, a school board in Kansas just filed a similar lawsuit against the manufacturer. So I suspect that will be the first of many on this latest round of litigation.
Mr. Fitzgerald, can you also comment on that brief or a little bit of consideration that we gave about possibly moving away from written absence notes towards an electronic version of that, a secure electronic version of that?
For sick days for students who maybe, I suspect something like that could be accomplished. What we want to assure is that we adhere to any FERPA obligations under the circumstances to make sure that the only individuals who are seeing that are on a need-to-know basis with regard to what those sicknesses are for. HIPAA would not apply here. It would be a FERPA-based issue, but I do think from an electronic perspective, it can be dealt with both either working through a vendor or directly with our own systems to how we electronically transport that.
I believe Conestoga High School does that now, so it might be someone we can look to see what they.
Okay, extracurricular.
Next week, please.
Okie dokie. Finance meeting met September 10th, district office. Again, the first part of the meeting was really focused on the monthly reports. The good news is that we're 2 months in, and Mr. Fink is very confident that we're doing a great job. How's that? Well, it's, and all kidding aside, it's like I said, we're only 2 months in, but the good news is that everything so far on our executive reports are tracking, so it usually takes 3 to 4 months before we start to see if there's anything that start trending one way or the other, but right now we're fine with where we're at. We did talk about the high school project, the expansion project. The project's is 85% paid out. In return, there's 15% of the overall cost is unpaid. Of course, to this point, there were no additional change orders requested. Mr. Fink and his team are diligently working on the audit prep, which will be here in October, and we're always excited to see how well we are going to do, which I believe we're going to do awesome as usual. We did get into conversation around the food services update. To date, we're very happy with the progress that's occurred. The food itself is, all reports that we're hearing is way better. I'm trying to think of the right way to say it. It's 2,000% better than what we had before. But it's too early to start tracking because as per this meeting, we only had about 4 days of the school year in. But we're very excited to know that that the meal choices are being widely accepted throughout the district. We did start this week in Spring City and in Royersford to roll out the breakfast option. The breakfast option first phase is to provide muffins and Jim, if you want to, what was it, muffins and fruit? And
It's cold.
Cold.
Cold bag grab and go type of thing at the elementaries to start with Royersford and Spring City for the next 2 weeks, and then seeing how that goes as a bellwether for rolling it out to the rest of the facilities.
Yeah, so we're progressing right along, and like I said, I'm very happy with the progress. It was a big undertaking to do the switch for the start of the school year, but things are going good. I did have the opportunity to stop in 2 weeks ago to try some of the new food, and I will tell you that what I tried compared to something I tasted or sampled years ago was a lot better. I basically tried a cheeseburger, but I've been told I got to come back and try the pizza next, so that will be on my list at some point. And then, let's see, the only other topic that was discussed was on our agenda this evening was a continuation from what I brought up at the last board meeting or last month when I was talking about potentially using some of the funds that were surplus to provide, and we use approximately $100 per teacher that could be used for additional supplies in the classroom. And, you know, the takeaway is that there'll be money distributed to each building, and it'll be working with, Jim will be working with those building administrators to establish a criteria as far as how the money could be spent. But what we did say was that money cannot be spent on like school projects, bus trips, things like that. It was really focused on additional school supplies, pens, pencils, index cards, and they were going to put together a list of things that could be used within the classroom. So that is on the agenda for discussion and approval for next week. And lastly, we are asked about getting analysis done as far as understanding the real estate taxes, the real estate transfer, and the interim taxes, and not the real estate transfer, but the real estate interim taxes, and just get a better feel for what goes on as far as what kind of person hours is used each month to basically manage through that. And Jim's going to, over the next meeting, in a month or two, going to provide some analysis back to the board. Any questions? Okay, so then right after that, we jumped right into property. And let me just bring that up. Property did meet 7:30 at the district office, September 10th, following the finance meeting. Portion of the meeting was focused on getting an update regarding the high school expansion project. We are in the final phase or steps of completing that. Unfortunately, the big item that's still outstanding is the arrival of the elevator. The new anticipated date of the elevator coming is the end of September. And then once the elevator arrives, it will probably take a few weeks, Robert, to get that thing installed. 3 weeks to get the elevator installed and everything associated to that completed. So it's a little disheartening that that's the last piece of the puzzle that needs to be completed, but unfortunately, everyone tried to do whatever possible to get the elevator here sooner. There was questions and conversation around how responsive the contractor has been over the last, I'll say, few weeks or so. And there was some frustration from the district standpoint, but per the meeting, they were in and had about 70+% of the punch list completed. You know, we'll continue to stay on top of that and try to get this project done and opened as soon as possible.
Mr. DeBella, is there a date for opening the performing arts side as well?
There's not a date as of yet because there was cabinetry and stuff that need to arrive and be completed and put together. So we'll have a better understanding of when that will be available as well.
Okay, thank you.
The Ram Stadium bathroom project is basically 75% complete, and it's anticipated to be done by the end of September. So again, it's another project that Mr. Hunter took under his wing and got that completed. And I know between all of the people that utilize that facility, including Spring City Legion, is going to be thrilled when that bathroom is functioning. We did briefly discuss the facilities condition assessment project, which is now in the final phases of compiling data. The project consultant, ICS, will be presenting the assessment findings to the administration on 9/24. A brief overview of the assessment will be shared at the October property meeting. New business, I did, like I mentioned in the finance meeting under the high school expansion, there were no additional change orders. New business, we discussed proposed renovation to a section of the existing playground at Limerick Elementary that would include autistic support sensory play area. We brought that up a few times, and That is also on the agenda as well. It's something that we need to put in place and have that completed, since our Limerick Elementary has been the hub for our artistic program. We also discussed the purchase of a new scrubber, a ride-on scrubber for the high school, which is basically a little bit bigger and has an increased battery capacity. This is needed to be able to accommodate not only what we're cleaning today, but also the additional spaces that were added. The current scrubber at the high school will be repurposed, and older one will be phased out. Then we got into police management. The phone intercom cameras are installation will be completed at the end of the month. The high school expansion security cameras were installed. Mutual Link initial setup was completed. Gentech server project is in progress. We're waiting Part B grant approvals to start our digital radio project. And we did have a brief overview of some upcoming training within the department, which Chief Boyer is doing an excellent job with keeping up with all the current training and qualifications that our officers are going through. Our new 3 officers were sworn in on 9/5, and they'll be in full duty rotation the start of October 1st. Any questions? Somebody muffled, huh?
What are the chances of us getting a hallway connecting like the 2 floors upstairs, like the senior wing and the sophomore wing?
Huh?
Like the traffic coming downstairs is so bad.
Unfortunately, that's the way the building is originally architected. That's something that won't happen. But it's a good question. Just think of the exercise you get.
But like you're late for almost all the classes if you have to go down those stairs.
Yeah, I know, but unfortunately, the way the building was originally architected, and then the way that wing was added on, that was it wasn't part of the original plan and can't be something that would be added.
Expansion, and determined that it wasn't feasible to do, but it was looked at, so.
Okay, Assistant Superintendent report.
Thank you, Mr. DeBello. Quick enrollment update. I just wanted to provide a quick update on where we are September to September. So last September 2018 as compared to this September 2019. Generally, our enrollment reflects an increase of 69 students across the whole district, bringing our enrollment to 8,060. In our elementary buildings overall, we dropped 6 students, with the increases reflected in the 5th through 8th grade band of plus 50 and the 9th through 12th grade band at plus 25. So just kind of a quick update on where we are with enrollment. QPR training and resiliency and team building activities are happening this Thursday in the 9th grade center. Our 9th grade students will participate in team building and resiliency activities that will be led by students in the 10th through 12th grade resiliency and VEDM clubs, as well as participating in specially designed student-focused QPR training. Just as a reminder, if you're not up to speed on QPR, it stands for Question, Persuade, and Refer, and it's a set of steps to help peers, friends, and anyone with proven suicide prevention strategies. The mission of QPR is to reduce suicidal behavior and save lives. I want to say thank you to Dr. Weidenbaugh, Dr. Rupert at the 9th grade center, and Mr. Rigner at the 10th through 12th grade center, as well as their staff members for working together to literally change the lives of our students. Athletics and extracurricular update. Fall sports are in the height of their seasons. I've been making rounds to catch as many events as possible, picking and choosing weekly from the 9-page events listing of activities. My word. From Mr. McDaniel's office. Our students are doing a wonderful job representing our district. Thanks to all of our coaches for creating great opportunities for our students and for being great role models. On a personal note, I was fortunate to be able to participate in the coin toss for the second home football game, which is also youth night. I practiced flipping a lot to make sure that I did it well. This Saturday is Spring Forward's marching band home show called the 56th Annual Pageantry of Sound, starting at 5 o'clock. Many local bands will begin their competition season on our field. It's sure to be a great evening, so thanks to Mr. Jones, his staff, and the Band Boosters for all of their hard work preparing for this event, and of course, the students. Community events. It's been an exciting time not only for Spring Forward, but also for our supporting communities. I've had a chance to visit several of our community days and events, such as the Limerick Days, Royersford Days, youth football and cheerleader pep rally, and I was fortunate to meet the Spring City Elementary School community at the pavilion dedication last week. I'm happy to see that while Springford is a large district, we still see a lot of value in supporting the idea of small-town community. That's pretty special. Back to school nights and open houses. This is the season for our schools to open their doors to our families so they can meet our teachers and see our learning spaces. Tomorrow marks the culmination of our evenings with the 10th through 12th grade center's open house. I've personally enjoyed meeting the teachers, students, and their families on these evenings. And lastly, just a little plug for committees. Our board committees have continued in September for the upcoming year. I just want to encourage our community members and Springford employees to stop by a committee meeting from time to time. There are great opportunities to sit side by side with board members and administration as we discuss the business of running a school district. Thank you.
Great. Any questions? Solicitor's report.
Oh, just very briefly, as many in the board can tell, there's been a lot of changeover with regard to the pupil services side in the district, especially the supervisors of special education. You have a new assistant superintendent. Our office is going to be interfacing with a number of these new individuals over the next few weeks with regard to some of those transition issues that come, especially with the delivery of special education and the specific laws, the IDEA and 504, and trends within the district. So that hopefully will help transition those new individuals and give them kind of the backstory of issues going on in the district over the last number of years. So keep you posted on that as it goes forward.
And Mr. Fitzgerald, again, I want to go back to the vaping thing real quick. Like anything in the media, it becomes hysteria, right? So we got to be able to separate fact from, fiction as far as what's being promoted out there. I mean, vaping definitely has issues and that, but we need to diligently move in a direction that's, following facts. So, and I know that there's opportunities that there may be devices that are available on the market that we may want to think about in the future, installing in certain places within the school building. I mean, these are all the things I think that we need to start thinking about as well.
And certainly that will be a prerogative of the administration how they deal with it. And yes, and when you have a quote unquote public health crisis that is presenting itself, you will have advocates on both sides of the argument, plaintiffs' attorneys, defense attorneys that will be trying to be or taking advantage of the situation. I am not a plaintiff's attorney, but it is interesting to see how plaintiffs' attorneys are looking to utilize school entities for these arguments.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. And I mean, there's definitely implications and all that, but I think that we need to move forward with our eyes wide open. But we need to look at these possibility of, if we install some type of devices within the district, what that means from a legal standpoint.
Well, sure.
That's all.
And that's fine.
Right.
And that's certainly there's prerogative in that regard for the administration to do. What's interesting about these actions, both it's an equitable action and a monetary one. They're essentially looking for these companies to to stop the production, but they're also looking then for money for schools. And of course, they get paid as well. But they are looking for some sort of monetary remuneration for what they believe to be lost time. I don't practice in the area, but it's an interesting issue that is coming forward.
And that was my whole point. I mean, we just, this is one of those things that we potentially will need to do or will be doing something, but we need to do it, yeah, that's a good way of saying it, strategically as far as what our next steps should or would be.
More importantly than suing people and fining, what are we doing to educate students on the hazards of vaping? There's been a lot of stories in the media about kids getting lung diseases that are incurable from the things they're vaping because the lungs aren't designed to inhale oils. So I don't think we can wait till they get to health class in 11th grade. I think we should be looking at what can we do to educate kids from K through 12 on the hazards and reasons why you don't do those things and what can happen to you.
And on that note, I know out of Erin Cruz's office and Ms. Cruz's office that in the weekly updates there are tips about vaping, fact, not fiction, that have been going out. And they are conversation starters for parents to discuss with their kids. I'm certain, I'm not certain, but I would bet that if this topic comes up in a classroom discussion, that the teachers are also addressing. I've heard from my own kids that they'll talk about the dangers. They'll talk about the things that are put out there in the media and the health crisis that it's presenting. You've heard that it's been related to a couple of deaths recently. We've all heard that as well. So this conversation that we had in policy, and I think Ms. Butzer and Mr. Denner would agree with me, was really born out of the fact that we were really working with Chief Boyer, Mr. Rizzo and I working with Chief Boyer to address a whole other slew of issues that have come in front of policy, many of which have come before you, and we've asked you to look at the language on those. And in doing so, the conversation just progressed, and we moved on, got on to the topic of the vaping. So we do feel like it's something, there are measures that can be taken. Certainly, we wouldn't disclose those, but the idea is that it's bad. It's bad for the students, and we have to figure out what the best course of action, be strategic, and address it going forward.
And
with
these
our
vaping pens can also be a conduit for illegal drugs in them as well, which is another component of this issue, and some really bad drugs. And it can expose our officers to potential issues if they're exposed to those drugs, fentanyl, carfentanil, and the like. And there's issues with other law enforcement as to what we can do under those circumstances. So it's a Pandora's box, not just the public health crisis of vaping in and of itself, but in general.
Stay tuned for more discussions on that.
Mrs. Zalewski, didn't we also just do an update on the policy and include vaping in the policy last year? Like the middle of last year, am I remembering that correctly? The use of tobacco, wasn't vaping added into
Yes, it
that
was.
as well?
Yes, it was.
Okay. So this is taking it a step further, but
Correct.
we have already, I don't want folks to think that we haven't looked at it or touched it yet.
No, we certainly,
So this is kind
we
of
certainly
taking the next
have,
step. Yeah.
But because it's become increasingly popular, and in many ways, it is said that the companies have targeted the younger generation. And in doing so, it's proliferating this
It's
issue.
the fruit flavors and the,
Sure,
all that.
sure.
Yeah.
So it is something that we've touched on, but
That's what I thought.
we do need further exploration.
I
on
just
that.
wanted to make sure that
Yep.
folks didn't think, because I
Yep.
recall
No,
that we
you're
had. so
absolutely right. Thank you.
It's said in our, you get demerits for it, and it said, on our demerit slip that drug abuse is one of the boxes on it. So.
Okay. All right. Meeting minutes, any questions? Personnel, A through F.
On C1, I had asked for this in the past about when we hire above step one to get some justification, explanation. Can we get that for this position? Because I like to see that every time we put somebody on the agenda that's above step one that we're hiring.
Yes, it's in your weekly memo.
Okay, any other questions? Finance, A through G. Property, A through B. Programming curriculum, A. Conferences and workshops, A through C. Other business, A through E. Board comment.
I have a couple things. The discussion we just had on vaping, and I know Dr. Gooden sent out his goals and objectives for this school year. I think a good one would be an education program for vaping, the hazards of vaping, and what the dangers are and why kids should be doing it. Because I think we need to have a formalized education. If the students' fines, like I said, don't really inform kids of the hazard, they just get a fine or they get demerits or whatever it may be. And parents aren't always the best source because a lot of adults are vaping now too. And so I think we should really be educating the kids and have a formal program for that kind of education on vaping.
We have a good test subject audience. If anyone's willing to, by a show of hands, have you heard about the dangers of vaping in school? 1, 2, 3. So it's out. It is out there.
Well, I'm not talking about just, it's dangerous, the whys and what can happen to you and getting addiction and all those things.
I think it's part of the standard health education curriculum
Yeah,
with
kids get
smoking
health,
and
they get that in 11th grade. I think it's maybe,
what?
they get, most of the health is in 11th grade, so.
We have
I think we'd
assemblies for
be
it.
starting very young with the education, a formal program, not just up to each teacher to say, don't vape, it's dangerous. I think a formal educational, something that's becoming an epidemic and creating a lot of health hazards, I think we really should be addressing that.
We've had assemblies for it. Like last year, we had a whole drug assembly and stuff. So it's out there.
I know that I'm seeing our audience out there. Am I right in saying that many high school students think that students that are having medical issues with vaping, it's because they're vaping with things, with vape cartridges that have been tainted or things have been added to it or THC or whatever the case may be? Because my senior tells me that if you buy a Juul, then it's good. Because it hasn't been, I understand. I'm just relating what my senior says, that it's all good, that everybody's getting sick just because they're doing the ones that have been tainted. And I'm not sure that's really the case. So we definitely want to focus on that, and this district is beginning to focus on the whole idea of vaping, not just the punishment or the disciplinary piece of it, but also the education piece of it. Because it can be this simple, boys and girls. Your lungs aren't meant to put oil in them, period. They're just not meant to have oil placed in them. And I think that's going to cause problems, and I think those problems are going to continue to grow over the years as the medical implications begin to bear fruit for the amount of things that have been going on. So yeah, we definitely want to make sure our kids are aware of that.
I have 2 kids in the district, so one's a senior, one's a sophomore, and there's much discussion about vaping and the various manufacturers. But my concern would be we focus in on getting the policy structured first and then look at the bigger pictures, because the policy is what we control. If there's litigation or other medical issues, we don't control that. We can convey the information, but the structure is what we control and what we should define. One other factor on a different side, I've had a couple of parents talk to me, and also my senior daughter. As far as graduation day, where is that? I get asked the question that way, but what are we doing with graduation day? Is that day fixed or just?
We vote on it in April.
I know that, but what's the date?
You don't know? We have 3 emergency days built into the calendar. If we don't use those emergency days, we back up those days. So we usually do that. The question is, and I've already looked at that, the last day of school, if we use those vacation days, would be on, or the snow days, it would be on Monday. And there's some concern about that. And so I'm sure that the administration will recommend that we do graduation for the seniors on a Friday night, and the rest of the students, K through 12 or K through 11, will come to school on Monday. We've done it in the past,
that
I believe.
works. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any other board comment? One of the things that I was thinking that, when I'm hearing about this, we haven't done a town hall meeting in a while, and maybe we should think about planning a town hall meeting in October, and there's a couple topics that we could talk about, and vaping is one of them. And I think that it's more about us as a board, administration is responsible for educating the student. We could take that opportunity to educate the parents and the community. And, you know, there's a couple topic items that I have that I think would be very good for us to do a town hall meeting, and that definitely would be one of them. So is the board receptive to us doing something like that, and like maybe the third week of October?
Absolutely.
I think I'd like
is
to
that
know
too
what
early?
the topics would be before I commit, like, to have an understanding of what you're thinking we would be focused on.
I have some ideas. I mean, a couple ideas I have is, one is I'd like for us to talk about vaping. The other one is that to give a brief overview or talk about what we're looking at or what we're hearing from a school start time perspective is an idea. Another idea is I'd like to spend a little bit of time doing a high-level overview about all of the security that we've been putting in the district, and, you know, things that we would want to disclose to the community. There's a lot of things that we wouldn't disclose, of course, but there's things that I think that we should want to promote to the community so they see what we're doing. And one of the reasons is that many people probably don't know this, but there was an incident in Royersford at the last 2 Fridays ago. Wasn't impacting our school district, but it was going on while the high school football game was going on. And because of our officers being part of, on the radio system of everything else, Chief Boyer made a decision to basically activate his team and put like a net around the football stadium to secure the environment, which is great. Like I said, there was no concerns per se that it was going to spill into, you know, the football stadium, but it was going on in Royersford, and eventually ended up in middle of Pennsylvania. But Chief Boyer and his team did an excellent job in executing a plan and a strategy to basically secure basically around the entire stadium. We did briefly talk about that at the property meeting as well. So I think there's some of the topic items that I think would be very beneficial, informative for us to do a town hall.
And so when you talk about a town hall, and Mr. DeBello, I've attended a number of them in the past, and usually there was a specific topic, and we were seeking, the board at the time was seeking input on a specific topic or item. This is more of an information giving. Is that how I'm understanding what you're saying?
Well, the only town hall that was very specific is when we had the town hall about the high school expansion, but we did town hall meetings in the past that were
Right.
very like this, where we had 2, 3 major topic items, or we talked about from a board perspective what we're doing and where we're going, and that's what this is more or less what this would be focused on. So you are correct. We had both type of town hall
Right.
meetings, and when we've done them in the past, we've had very success. You know, on average, about 700 plus residents have showed up.
Okay.
So.
That's great, because again, kind of sitting here thinking, well, if we're delivering information, how does it differ from this meeting? And certainly not saying that I don't want to, just I want to understand.
Right, well, that's, right.
You know, what the value is and the participation and so forth. So
Right.
that's great.
So I'd like to,
Thank you.
if the board's receptive to that, I'd like to shoot for like the third week of October, like maybe that Thursday night.
I'm sure this is a little premature, Mr. DeBello, but are we looking to keep this in-house? And by that definition, I mean, are we looking to bring in an outside commentator? If we're going to speak from a medical perspective, are we looking to bring someone in to talk about the true nature of the impact and the effect of it? Or are we just looking to educate the parents and the overall community? It's early on right now, but I just wonder.
Well, I think that we could work with the administration and we could figure out what information we have and how we want to share it, and if we want to bring somebody in, or. But I'm trying to start at the level of let's get into planning, let's put it on the books, let's move in this direction, and this is what we've done in the past. I mean, we said we're going to do this. These are the areas that we like to communicate out, and then we figured out what was the best way to do that once we got rolling.
We'll be in Hershey that third week of October, so you might want to look at the 4th. I think we should look at the 24th. The 17th, we're in Hershey.
I think the 24th would be better.
Then we could, what, is there 5 weeks in October? That works out. So, all right, let's do let's do the 24th. Okay, 24th of October. Okay, any other comment?
Yeah, Dr. Gooden, you mentioned that the justification for this step 2 is in the weekly memo. I didn't see it in the last week or the week before's memo. Was it in one prior to that? Maybe you can
It
look
wasn't
at
last
it.
week, it was in the week before, and it's at the bottom of Beth's spreadsheet that she sends out with new people,
Okay, so it's in the bottom of the spreadsheet from 2 weeks ago. Okay, 'cause I didn't-
correct, Beth?
It was in there on the 29th of August and on September the 6th.
Okay, so. Stick it at the bottom of the
Well,
spreadsheet. That's real.
Most certainly, we could send something out tomorrow or whatever, if that's not available. Mark, if you don't see it, just send them,
Yeah, I'll
just send them a quick
Just
email.
like something other than sticking at the bottom of the spreadsheet that's.
And that's
not
fine, we
updated much,
could,
yeah.
we could just, in the future, we just
It's not,
lift it out. So, okay. Any other board comment?
Yeah, one comment. We've said the 24th of October. I'm curious if that works for the administration. Okay, you good? We're making a lot of decisions without talking to them, so.
Moved his wedding anniversary. All right, any other board comment? Any public to be heard on anything?
They can't, the video can't hear you if you're not on
I'm
the.
sorry. Where would you hold this town
You have to
meeting?
state your name and where you live.
Wendy Earl. And what else?
Where you live. Just, you don't have to give your actual street address, but town and,
Collegeville.
all right, that's it. Your question, ma'am?
Where would you, where would you hold this town meeting? Is it here? Is
At the high school auditorium.
in the, okay, that's all I want.
Sorry, but there, we have to follow the. Any other questions, comments? Remember, vaping is bad.
You're about to make some children very happy.
Yep. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.
Y'all picked a good meeting to come to.